Words shape perception, stories shape belief, and strategy determines whether your message lands or gets lost. Welcome to The Edge. On today's edition, we're having a powerful conversation with a woman who has turned communication into capital and language into leverage. She is a strategy and communications expert, the convener of Grammar Ministry, and the creative mind behind Afri-curated platforms. That reminds us that clarity is not luxury, it is a necessity. My guest is Tolagbe Martins, a woman building influence by helping people and brands find their voice, refine their message, and own their narrative. This is The Edge, where ideas meet execution, and this conversation is about building the business of communication.
My name is Tolagbe Martins, and I work as a strategy and communications expert based in Lagos, Nigeria.
Tolagbe's work sits at the intersection of language, strategy, and culture. Before Grammar Ministry, before Afri-curated, there was an idea that words could do more than just sound good. They could open doors, build credibility, and move people. Let's follow her story on how she turned words into capital. Where did this vision begin?
I work with founders, teams, businesses, even subnationals, and I work with a particular thread, which is that when there's a gap between your actions and your communications, it will cost you money, it will cost you time, it will waste resources. The tagline of our business is communicating with clarity, and we support people to do that. So honestly, I just got tired of seeing so many random typographical errors and wrong usage of words. And the internet is fantastic because you can set up your ring lights, your camera, and just talk about what you're interested in. And honestly, I literally just started with, it's not sequence, it's sequence, it's not loose, it's loose, it's not match, it's marge. You know, the commonly mixed up words, session, section, the things that bothered me. And I often tell people that the thing that you think is just you, just talk about it. You find out that there's a community. So people started engaging with that content. And then people started asking me, please come and help me. I've been training myself. And I have to read everything before it goes out. I have to check everything. And honestly, that's how I built a whole other business. Sometimes it's like a movie to me too, because I can't believe that. And when I'm talking to people, I'm mentioning because whatever you're interested in, just take it with passion and diligence. You will be surprised where it will take you. So in every workplace, I was always the one asked, just quickly read this thing, help us check it. And honestly, at the time, I just felt like people didn't want to do their work. They just wanted to give it to me to do. And then I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, and he talks about the 10,000 hour principle. And, there are many people that argue against it, but it basically says that anything you've done consistently for 10,000 hours, you have mastered. And you may have done it in ways that you don't expect. So my so-called ability to read and write well started with me living with my grandmother, who was an English teacher. My mom is a doctor. She's a very busy young doctor. And she had these two little girls, me and my sister. So we spent most of our time with our grandmother. So she would make us write essays, recite poetry. Then she would ask us what it means. So from a young age, I was doing what you would call like comprehension exercises. I was parsing meanings, and then I was being forced to write. So by the time I finished university, I started working. I'd done the 10,000 hours. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so what I thought everybody could do, what everybody could. So in workplace, I would see hours wasted on emails back and forth, people sending emails and noted, follow up. I thought, surely there's a better way to do this. And then social media came along, as wonderful as it is. And I just started talking about these things. I literally just started making videos, telling people the things that bothered me in the workplace that I could see bothered other people.
SNUB.
And people started asking me, could you come and train our teams? Please, can you come and work on this? And because this wasn't my job, I was working in public-private partnerships, training manpower, in building systems. I had to suddenly realize, okay, there's a demand for this and there's a gap. And in COVID, I was in between projects and I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to train more. And I was fortunate enough to meet a group of people. So I worked with them to realize what was actually missing in the workplace. Email etiquette, conflict management. I mean, we've gone so far now. We work with legal teams, oil and gas. Particularly oil and gas is interesting because engineers are great because they don't know how to communicate about business. Like they're so good about technical aspects, but they don't know how to write for a general audience. And so we've developed this full suite of courses. I think the last time we counted had 90 courses for almost every pillar. So we have the retail pillar, we have a legal pillar, then we have just core business and teams where we try to work with companies so that their teams function better. People often don't realize that your role is directly connected to another person's role. I'm just doing my own job. It doesn't work like that. When you do your job and you can see the link between your job and someone else's, then you start to understand what the overall vision is. And finally, we work with a lot of founders because operators, they have it all in their head, but they don't know how to communicate it. The vision to their teams as they're building. Because many times you start and you're the one doing everything. You hire one staff, you hire another, but you never sat down to communicate that this is where I'm trying to go with this. So I'm able to help people make sense of whatever it is they're dealing with. I'm very interested in different things. I'm a generalist. So I would say, a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things. So I think that mindset of not being afraid to learn things and not being able to try things means that I can often come in, listen to what is going on, and identify where the challenges are.
Quite the story. And now on The Edge, it's time for Money Minute, where we break down how ideas translate into income. Because communication is not just an art, it's also an industry. Money Minute is up next. Ideas are beautiful, but execution is where the real work begins. Building platforms around communication requires consistency, credibility, and a deep understanding of people. Our conversation with Tolawe continues, and we know that beyond the aesthetics and eloquence, there's been a grind, refining the craft, educating clients, and proving that strategy matters. She has built a career proving that language is not just soft skill, it's also a power skill. Let's talk about the work behind the words.
Environment, for sure. I worked on a significant waste management project that didn't actually fly. It was roundly rejected by the people, and it probably made me fully understand how communication can go wrong. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if you don't understand what you're trying to achieve, if you don't buy in, doesn't matter. You can have the best solution. So that was very, very marked as an example of how not to carry all your stakeholders along. So that's always going to be a challenge. At some point, people feel, oh, we do everything. And I don't do everything. So it's down to how you tell the story. And it's funny because with founders, it's something that I've explained. When you wear a lot of hats, you have a job to pull the common thread so that people understand. But I will also say, this is where my gender hat comes on. Men don't get you're doing many things. It's women that get you're doing many things, right? Nobody says to Mr. Dangote that today you're selling flour, tomorrow you're selling noodles, tomorrow you're selling petrol, tomorrow you're selling cement. Nobody says that because he tells you that they're all essentials, right? So again, it's the story. So I had to learn the confidence to express that, hey, I'm interested in these things. I'm good at them. And I've tailored products and services to each of them. Here they are as a bundle. You can access them or not. But I will also say that using channels like LinkedIn and even Instagram to just talk about the things you're interested in will convey that authority and credibility. Going on the radio and just being able to talk about specific things. We need more generalists. Generalists are going to say, well, specialists have a very narrow focus. So they go deep. You still need people who go wide. And I'm one of them. There's very no spirit for the nose. The Kenya Lagos Institute to the power, which was in Lagos and was an attempt to restructure the public-private partnerships that existed. It was bringing one major private provider who would come with investment. But it rattled too many cages and affected too many interests. The communication on the timeline wasn't properly done, so people expected the solution to work overnight. They didn't understand just how much infrastructure was required. And in the end, the project was rested, and the public sector is doing, funny enough, they're doing the same thing, but it's more acceptable and it's being done by public face than in private face. So execution is everything. And I will tell people that you need to start the execution. Mm-hmm. You can find the clarity as you grow along. So people will think that, oh, you people just sit down and come up with roadmaps and come up with, fancy slides. I think my approach is slightly different because many times I want to see what you're already doing. I want us to look at what is working, what is not working. Something needs to already be in motion. So the misconception is that many times people just want to sit down all day and talk. They don't want to do. We have this debate on what is our addressable market size. Every time we talk about 200 million, it's rapidly being debunked. We don't have 200 million people with purchasing power. So how many do we actually have? First question. So that founders are working with proper data. You're building products and services that will actually reach markets, and you can better decide on what to build and how to build that, who to build for, which means you find a niche. I found a niche of people who love to discuss apostrophes, our mill versus wood. It means that there's a niche for everything and everyone. You just need to find it. You need to do the work. That's the so-called strategy, right? Where we're going is trying to build products that will scale. We have digital products quite a lot, but I'm also realizing that how do we build the workforce? So in speaking to my founders, one of the big challenges is talent. Talent is arriving, it's not fit for purpose. Whether we have numeracy skills, numeracy challenges, literacy challenges, critical thinking, ability, and capacity. And I can't solve those because those are structural educational talent. But we can begin to build pipelines so people realize that this is dignified work and you can do it. So start in the UK, someone will start as a shelf stacker at 16 and retire as the head of a whole unit at 60. They've worked in John Lewis or wherever their whole lives. We need to build that pipeline.
If you're just joining us, this is Still the Edge. It's time now for our Edge Quote, a thought to sit with long after the conversation ends. There are many people who speak well, but very few understand why messages work, how culture influences perception, and when to say what matters. This is where your edge comes in, your ability to combine strategy, storytelling, and cultural intelligence. Let's see what sets Solagbe's work apart from the others.
I was asked this question when I was teaching a training set of sessions for a big retail brand in Nigeria, a big retail operator that had multiple brands. And they said, why should we use you? Then we can go online and get courses. I'm like, of course you can. But your courses are not going to reflect the Nigerian sensibility. I've worked almost exclusively with Nigerians. So my knowledge of this market and of the way we operate here is very, very deep. And I come at it with, I would say, a very unique blend. My background in psychology means that I'm a very keen observer and student of human behavior. I'm numerate enough, having run businesses and worked for it's almost 20 years now. So I know the business imperative very, very clearly. So I come at things in a very realistic way. What's going to work in a market? What's the best way to use resources? And then finally, I mentioned was I'm very good at explaining it. Very, very good. People have told me what like I know. Um, so those three together mean that I can speak to all audiences. Sometimes I have to speak to artisans and explain their job functions. And same thing, I can do that in the C-suite with no problem. So that versatility is definitely something that that gives me the edge. When I worked with Pagan, they were new. Literally, I hosted a 5th anniversary. Uber had their first, we are coming to Nigeria and we want to meet the key players in the ecosystem. And I hosted that. So I've got the perspective of from then till now. So there's definitely in this market resilience. You must be flexible about your ways, but not about your objective. Your objective is to succeed. But how are you going to do that? It's going to depend. You have to be like water. The resilience comes from listening, active listening, something that we train on, where you're listening to understand, not just to respond. Because many times in the listening, we want to hear what people are not saying. So people talk a lot about communication. Something that throws people off about me is after a few interactions, you're very observant. And I say, yes, but it's because you expect observant people to be quiet. And because I'm chatty, you think I'm chatty, so I can't say. And then I say, but I'm talking with my mouth. My eyes are still there. I can still see, right? So those people have displayed what we call situational awareness, in that you can have a vision and then you have to adapt it to the realities of the market. So your messaging will change to what obtains in the bucket that you're in. Something like Fashion Week, they just turned 15. And there's been a major shift to sustainability and to circular economy and to intellectual property. Things they were not talking about at the beginning. The beginning was just clothes, right? But they've tapped into what is happening in the zeitgeist and how do we make sure that we harness that, so much so that they've just won a massive prize, to help them continue their work. So you're going to have to be aware of what is on ground. You're going to have to adapt. Nigeria, people like to say Nigeria is different from everyone else. It's not. It's unique in the same way that the circumstances that got us here, whether it's colonialism, amalgamation, the sheer diversity of the people. So what you do in Lagos is not what you're going to do in Lokoja, and you shouldn't expect it to work. But there is a lot of intelligence that we have. And one of my challenges to myself is to begin to document that. People are, it's working in some areas. What are they doing? How do we draw on that wisdom? And it's back to what I said about listening. I don't go into places with, hey, I have the solution for you. Or I did, and I got burnt in the project. So I've learned not to do that. I've learned to go in and say, tell me about what you're doing. And then I can point out where I see that things could be done better.
Communication is evolving. Audiences are smarter, attention is shorter, and authenticity is everything. As someone shaping conversations across platforms and communities, let's listen to what the future looks like for Grammar Ministry, Afri-Curated, and the work Tolagbe is building. Where is she taking the next step? Let's find out in the concluding part of our conversation.
Trying to build what I call frameworks, repeatable, scalable system, so that I'm not training every day, same people, come back to the business, everybody's gone, we're starting again. That's where I see us trying to tap into this youth bulge we have. 1, 2, create the talent pipeline. Tourism may not quite be where we are going, but we have this workforce, we have the numbers, we have remote work, this possibilities. How are you going to train talent? The Philippines have done it. Kenya has done it. So that's how I'm planning to scale my plans for world domination. And founders will typically really get caught up in what they think. They had this great idea, and now they're so hung up on the idea that they won't either pay attention to what the market is saying or what their clients are saying. So you must be flexible on your methods, flexible on the product. If you are too caught up on what you think people want and you're not paying attention, the market is not going to reward that. Literally, I was telling a founder the other day that you can post 2 products. If you're trying to decide what to make, a blue dress or a pink dress, post the 2 and say it's available for pre-order. Whichever one they choose, that's the one you have buy plenty of fabric and mix. You're not going to, because you will make the 2, then you say nobody bought this one. But technology allows you to do that now. So you have to listen to the market and be prepared to, don't just listen, be prepared to execute what the market is telling. We're piloting in the first quarter of repeatable techniques and hacks that we've seen for businesses. And the goal is to try to get as many businesses to adopt this as possible. It's not even like a money-making thing. I just want people's businesses to work better. So the hope is that we can get government agencies that support businesses to help us so that can be adopted. Because these are things that tried and tested. You are sitting there wondering, why can't I get my staff to listen? I'm looking at assistant saying, okay, this is a hack from somebody who's been working for 30 years. Try this. But I don't think social media is enough to amplify messages. I still think you need town halls, you need face-to-face interactions. This is what I mean about where I'm new school, but I'm also old school. I know that there's still nothing like face-to-face. We train virtually and in person, but I still know that our outcomes are better when we train in person.
And finally, on the edge, our edge tip: practical wisdom for anyone building a brand, a business, or a voice. Take a listen.
This is my edge tip for you. Once you begin to build your systems, you want to make sure that you document exactly what is working. This will serve as your received wisdom and will allow you to scale by making it repeatable. We identify something that's working, we document it so we can repeat it. I really hope this helps.
We're almost at the end of today's edition, but before we go, here is how to connect with us. Words matter, strategy matters, and clarity is no longer optional. My thanks to Tolagwe Martins for reminding us that communication is not just about expression, it's also about impact. It's a wrap on The Edge for today, so until next week when we bring you another inspiring story, stay bold, stay inspired, stay on the edge. My name is Tochi Eputa. Take care and see you next time. Bye for now.